Hey, it's Chuck Armstrong with Loudwire Nights, and this is Loudwire Nights on Demand. It was great to reflect on the history of Helmet with the man himself, Page Hamilton. This conversation first aired on Thursday, September 5th. I hope you dig it. Well, 35 years ago, tonight's special guest formed the metal band Helmet in New York City, and over the last 3 decades, as far as I'm concerned, man, just for me personally, some of the most memorable, significant, timeless, unique, distinct, whatever you want to say, metal that I've ever heard, and some of the most intense, fun live shows that I've ever seen too. And man, they've released 9 studio albums. Most recently, just last year, they released Left. I am beyond excited to welcome Page Hamilton to the show. Page, thanks so much for hanging, man.
Yeah, nice to meet you, Chuck.
So listen, as I rattle through some of those details, 35 years as a band, 30 years of Betty, still touring the world. What runs through your head, man?
Well, I mean, I guess first off, I didn't form the band thinking that at the age of 64 I'd still be going out there and screaming my head off and playing this music, because it's incredibly physically demanding, emotionally demanding, obviously. But I've always said, if I feel like I can perform at a high level, that I'm going to continue to do it as long as I'm enjoying it. If it becomes drudgery or some kind of going through the motions, and I have many friends in bands who will go nameless, who I've watched many times, and they look like they're posing on stage, and because there's money and reunion tours, et cetera, so on and so forth. I don't knock them for it, because it's hard to make a living as a musician, but I feel like I've had a band together now. Kyle Stevenson has been with me for 17, 18 years. Danny Beeman, probably about 15, and Dave Case, like 12, 13 years, something like that. I don't, they can tell you the exact years that they joined, but so it's kept it fresh for me. I always, everyone will always say, oh, the original lineup, blah, 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 which was amazing. And I feel lucky to have had, almost 10 good years with those guys. Stanyer's a phenom, and Henry was a phenomenal musician as well. Is a phenomenal musician. But I wasn't ready to hang it up. I feel like I was really missing playing the songs. When in '99, the band broke up in technically in 98, but the last show was December 10th, 97. It's my ex-wife's birthday. I'll never forget it, in Italy, in Torino. And so last time I spoke with Henry, when I did the Bowie tour in 99, and I got to play with Ben Neal, a great trumpet player, composer, drum and bass guy, Joe Henry, Elliot Goldenthal, the great film composer who did Heat and Dreams and Titus and Across the Universe and Final Fantasy. These are all movies I've done with him. SWAT, amazing, really, really fun. But I just was really missing playing this music, specifically this music. And there's something about it for me that nothing can replace. And so when I got to LA after September 11th, I got divorced, band broke up, and then we were attacked by terrorists. I moved to Los Angeles and got called by the label to do an album, and a Helmet album. And unfortunately, at the time, I didn't have any contact with my former bandmates. So but I was working with a great drummer, this guy John Tempesta, who plays with the Cult now. He was in White Zombie and Rob Zombie. Anyway, we started playing, and it just felt good. It just felt right. So I feel like, there will come a time, though, and I don't know when, the more physically beat up I become, over these years. Like, I got a knee problem, I got a shoulder problem. I just had hernia surgery. I had surgery 2 years ago on my, gut, because you beat yourself up playing this music. I'm going to have to hang it up at some point, but I'm not quite ready. So here I am.
Well, and there's a difference too, right? If you have to hang it up because you kind of hit that point where you have to, or like you were saying at the beginning, where it's just not interesting to you, or you don't want to do it. Like there's a difference between those two things.
Absolutely. Yeah. No, as physically and emotionally exhausting as touring has become, and I have a girlfriend that I love, and she's here in LA, and So that takes me away from her, and it takes me away from I'm in my little studio where I do a ton of work for, I sang on the Kissing Booth movie, and I can record it all here. I do guitars. I'm working on a solo album, that's going to be kind of soundtrack stuff. And I got a jazz album deal. So I'm working on all that stuff. And so I have to leave the comfort of my home. But once I get on stage and I get in my zone, I've got my amps, my pedals, my guitar, my mic. I feel really like happy and comfortable. It's like, what did Kim Gordon once describe Wharton Tears studio in Fun City, where we did Strap It On in the Meantime, as like the womb. There's something like so comforting in Wharton's space. It was a basement in East Village-ish, a little up from the East Village in New York. That's how I feel when I'm home and I'm here. It's a comfortable place to be, but then you fly to Milan and you start a tour or whatever. We always start in Prague, actually, because that's our home base over there where we leave our gear. It's exhausting, but then you get on stage and you're like, oh yeah, I forget. This is why I love this.
Well, it's interesting because you've listed already, just all these different things you've done, and it crosses over, not just genres, but like mediums and different things. But what is it about Helmet and this metal, this music that you have made for so long? What is it about that brings that comfort or that sense of, home, whatever you want to call it?
There's early on, once I found John Stanier and Henry and my friend Peter, we were playing, we were writing together, we were coming up with stuff together, but I was always writing on my own at home too. I had a little 4-track Tascam cassette recorder, a drum machine, and and my little Super Champ that I still have. And I walked home one night and I had this epiphany or something, inspiration, call it whatever you will. I got this riff in my head. And we've been together maybe with the four of us for 6, 7, 8 months, and I got this riff in my head. It's the intro riff to the song Repetition, the first song on Strap It On, and it was just stuck in my head. I was walking home late at night in East Village, got home and I picked up the guitar and I was like, oh, this note that I'm hearing was a whole step below that, so an octave below that, and I'm like, that's not standard tuning. Oh, if I lower this string, that gets the note. And all of a sudden, this whole like vocabulary opened up. I started going like, wait, I can play power chords with one finger and play these cool rhythmic I'd always drum on the subway. I was the dork trying to do 3 against 4, or 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4. 5 against 4. It was always that guy. But so that stuff was kind of part of my kind of musical makeup, I guess. And it just started. Once that vocabulary was revealed to me, and I heard that stuff, the stuff just started pouring out. And I think there's something about it that it's not chord changes. It's more of a modal kind of a thing, where I'm playing a line that's a mode, like the song "Give It." There's a whole tone kind of jam section in there. And it just freed me from any brain stuff, because I stopped thinking about it too much. Because every time you pick up the guitar, my favorite band is AC/DC, and I'd always like, God, that riff is so good, ba-da-da. And you come out with these, watered down AC/DC riffs, or Husker Du. Like I was coming out with watered down Husker Du, bands that I loved, and that once I had that epiphany walking home, all I was writing was what I was hearing in my head. And it takes you out of, I think, an experience that some people have and some people don't with music is, it takes you out of your physical existence in a weird way.
Sure.
You go to a place that only music can take you to. Yeah. And Helmet has always done that for me. I'm on stage and I feel this, I don't know if I'm hypnotized, I don't know what it is, but it's this great feeling. It's a rhythmic, cool, a cool place to be.
I love hearing that story, man. Thank you for sharing that. So, I mean, as far as you were concerned, like the music you were listening to at the time or that you were into,
you were making something new. Like, you mentioned Husker Du and AC/DC. And, certainly you can find elements of that in Helmet, but, overall not really.
Yeah.
And so like when you went home and you figured out this tuning and how you can play power chords easier, like as far as you were concerned, you were kind of making music you hadn't really spent much time with. Is that safe to say?
We knew it, we knew that like once I came in with that riff and we started playing, and Stanier got it immediately,
Oh, wow.
And I'm like, look, you're going to stay in 4, but you have to figure out where the hell the turnaround is. Cause I don't know, and he was so good. He figured that out. And then I started to go, like, I could explain, well, if you're playing 3/4 against 4/4, every 3 measures is going to come back around and it's going to be on top. But we didn't analyze. I do that now because I'm teaching people this music and I'm loving doing that. But we didn't know. We just were going by feel, and everybody was so good. When we got to the Betty album, those guys were like, "Well, we want to write more," and I'm like, "Okay." So this is how I do it. I went to Henry's house. No, Henry came over to my house because John and I lived together at the time, and I had this. At that point, I'd expanded to an 8-track cassette recorder. And so I kind of showed him my method, my system of working. I said, play something. And he played me something. And I go, that feels like a verse riff. How would you develop this? Where would you go with this? And I think it's a lot of bands I produce and musicians that I work with. I try to preach that it's not just stringing 2 riffs together. You know what I mean? Because you can take anything and, you can glue, you know what I mean?
Yeah,
like anything together and call it a song. And sometimes that works. That's successful, but isn't it more interesting to be patient and let the riff develop as a conversation would? That's how Beethoven. I mean, I bring this up all the time. It's the great where it's in C minor. It's that rhythm, those notes, and he develops the masterpiece of all time out of it, right?
Yeah.
So we need to do that as musicians. And as composers, I mean, that's what we're doing. And metal music is closer to classical music than it is to jazz, it really, because it's the thematic development. Riffs are motifs. That's how I look at it anyway. But then I superimpose, I smear this mess over the top of everything. I was joking about it with my bandmates. I go, man, the best parts of the songs are the bridge where I demolish it with a solo. I'll have a really cool riff, and then I'm just playing a jazz mess over it. But anyway,
you had mentioned when you guys started out, when you started out, there was no thought that you would be here 35 years later, still playing the music, still talking about it. What was the goal for you guys? Just to see what would happen? We
just wanted to make music that was ours. Like, we admired all the bands in New York at the time. And we loved Sonic Youth, Rat-A-Rat-R, Live Skull. It was a band that we dug called the Honeymoon Killers. I'm trying to think of all the bands that were around at the time. Unsane came along around then, Surgery.
Right, yeah.
There were a bunch of bands playing, and we were friends. Like, we got along with everyone. I never felt a sense of competition, and Stanier and I would talk about this. We didn't think there was a scene, really. People were like, is there a New York scene? And we were like, not really, but there was. We were, there was an amazing scene. We had the Pyramid Club, CBGB's Lismar Lounge in a 3-block radius, Bowery and 2nd Street, First Ave between 1st and 2nd, and Avenue A. We're talking this small area in New York City where you could play. And so we were playing all the time. And once we auditioned at CBGB's, then they started booking us once a month, and so we could try stuff out, and it was just a really a great time to be in New York. But we knew we stood out. I mean, we weren't arrogant, but we were very confident, you know. I mean, because you know why we became confident is we rehearsed 3 days a week. And I said, I don't care if your mom and dad are in town, my mom and dad are in town. I don't care who's in town. We're rehearsing on these days. Bring them to rehearsal. I think my brother came to rehearsal once, you know. We rehearsed. That's how we got good. You know?
Well, and you know, for you, like, you know, moving from Portland, Oregon to New York City in the late 80s, like, I'm sure there's part of you that's like, I'm not going to waste this. Like, I'm not going to waste this time here.
Well, I didn't think like that at all. I just said, I just knew.
Hindsight,
I knew I wanted to be in New York, and I moved to New York. I mean, honestly, because of my jazz heroes. Thelonious Monk is from North Carolina. John Coltrane, you know, as well. Miles from East St. Louis. Louis Armstrong from New Orleans. Who else? Bird from Kansas City. These guys they were in New York. They all came from these various places and brought all their genius to New York City, and that's where great music was born in the 30s, 40s. Duke Ellington from DC, you know, they were all in New York, and I had this romantic vision of, I didn't know I'd have to live in a welfare hotel and, you know, and get six months behind on my rent, which I did in the welfare hotel. And I worked for the hotel. I was the midnight to 8 a.m. security guys. And my boss, like the owner of Vahik Babayan, he's like, Paige, you're so far behind on your rent. I'm like, I work for you. Like, you got to pay me more. I got to eat, you know?
Yeah.
Literally. But that's how it was back then. I just was obsessed. I just was obsessed with music. Still am, you know, just such a great, I don't know, greatest life you could ever have, you know?
Amen, man. Well, you know, as you talk about kind of those early days and just, you know, wanting to make music that was your own, fast forward 35 years, is that still kind of the goal? Like, is that, you know, obviously you said on stage with your amps, your pedals, like you feel at home, but it seems like what keeps you going is it's, you know, making music that's your own. Yeah.
It's always been, people will be like, well, do you feel bitter because Merck Mercuriadis, the kind of music biz legend who tried to sign us for a minute. He's like 50 million records have been sold from what you started. Don't you want part of that? And I'm like, yeah, sure, but I don't want to be in those bands. I want to be in my band. So I have to do it on my terms. You know what I mean? I've never tried to accommodate some notion of, you know, what will be popular. I don't care. That's why we have no show. I don't dress up. We don't do any of that. Yeah. And there's nothing against that at all. Nothing. But that's not for me. I was always drop the needle, listen to music, and I get turned on. You know, I'm just like, that is like, you know, the greatest feeling. And so it's still, you know, about melody, harmony, rhythm, form, and text. You got your words, form is your structure, melody, harmony, and rhythm. Those are the 5 elements of a songwriter, right? Whether it's Slayer or Mozart, you know? We have 12 notes in Western music. And why does somebody write something that's better and more interesting than someone else? And to me, I listen and practice and work constantly, like every day. You know, and there a friend of mine who's an art history professor up in Portland, Oregon, sent me an article from some British university study about guitar players' brains. Our brains are apparently different than other musicians. Like there's something about, there is a true obsession that we have with the guitar. You know, it's music first for me, but the guitar to me is so fascinating. And so there's something about the guitar that's very unique, you know, and it still hasn't dried up,
which is amazing, man. And that's the thing too, right? Like, we're talking about this, and you know, I was going to ask you, do you enjoy reflecting? And clearly you do. Like, you have this appreciation for the past and all of that. But it's amazing too to hear, you know, whatever it is, it's this mixture of gratitude, but also passion and excitement that keeps you moving forward and keeps you looking ahead too, which is just, it's really encouraging, man. And it's fun for me as a fan.
There are 2 things that come to mind. I just before we got on, I had a lesson with a 17-year-old kid who's in Burbank, and he loves the Descendants. So and Stanier used to listen to Descendants all the time. So I said, what song? He said, Dog and Pony Show. So I popped it up on YouTube and I go, okay, well, they're going, there's this, it's an A, in the key of A major. When I taught you this C major scale, how it's harmonized, and here are the chords, major, minor, minor, major, major. So I go, they're doing that, but in the key of A. So that is exciting to me to see a kid who's just getting into the guitar, because I started at 17. And see him be excited that I can teach him this Descendants song just like that. And what I thought about, and I've told this story a million times, there are a couple of things. When I was a college student at Oregon, I was a pre-med major. And because back in the 70s, we had 3 classes in high school. There were it was slow, medium, and fast. And I was in the fast class, but I was a stoner, so I didn't want to study. So I was at the end of the fast class. And so they're like, well, you're going to be a doctor or a lawyer. I'm like, I ain't going to be a lawyer. I'll be a doctor. So I'm in pre-med, as an undergrad, flunking out and just bombing. And I used to go across the street to Hayward Field, which is the great, track stadium. You can't climb over the fence now, but back in 1978, it was waist high. And I just said, what am I going to do with the rest of my life? I'd lay in the field there. I don't want to be a CPA. I don't want to be a doctor, a lawyer. I don't want to be a businessman. I want to be a musician. This is what I want to do. Yeah. And this is, it's talking about something that never dries up or goes away. I was like, I feel like I could, Miles Davis said this in an interview with Morley Safer a million years ago on 60 Minutes. It's like, I still wake up and I get an idea. I got to try it out. Every day this happens to me. Every day. And it's the greatest, if you maintain this, I maintain this enthusiasm because music is inconquerable. Is it? No one is going to master. No one can master.
That's right. That's right. Yeah.
Yeah. You could. Andre Segovia was the greatest classical guitar player that ever lived, arguably, but he couldn't do what Wes Montgomery did.
Sure. Yeah. So well, and you mentioned AC/DC, your favorite band. I mean, if anybody's close to conquering it, that they have, but they haven't. There are clearly things they don't do or can't do, and that's
exactly. But 2 of the greatest guitar players ever in a band. Easy. I've been teaching some of these rhythmic, these compound rhythms that I'm discussing. There's the If You Want Blood, You Got It live version of Bad Boy Boogie, and there's a breakdown near the middle of the song, I think, where it's just the brothers.
Yeah.
And Malcolm is playing. One of the patterns he's playing is called the hemiola. It's a dotted quarter note against 4/4, but then he tags it at the end of every 2 measures. So he's like, gung, 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 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, boom, boom, boom. He's playing this rhythm, and Malcolm and Angus is riffing, and then Malcolm does some shit that is like he's just playing in 1 chord, A. I think it's A, And he all of a sudden he goes into some 5 feel thing. He never loses the groove. It's like people that don't get AC/DC are thick. They are just goddamn good. I mean, and it's just feel. And everybody's like, oh, it's so easy. I can play it. It's like you cover an AC/DC song and you sound weak. You sound terrible. Nobody can do it. I love that. ZZ Top is kind of the same. ZZ, everyone's like, well, they're just playing the blues. I'm like, no, they're not. Come on, man. Billy is, oh, God, incredible.
Yeah, man. I mean, Billy Gibbons certainly is a guitar god. And what you said, too, about AC/DC, real musicians, real guitarists, they'll tell you how difficult it is. To the average listener, to what you said, if you don't get it, you're thick. It's a simple riff, whatever. But no, man, that is pretty exceptional.
It's not. It's they have so much heart and soul and feel. It's just they groove for miles and years and whatever. They're just it's so good. It was one of the best concerts I ever saw in my life. I got to see them. Obviously I never saw Bond, sadly, but with Brian, the band with if Bon Scott's the greatest rock singer of all time, Brian might be the second. Like Bon Scott was just, oh my God. Wow. Yeah. I've been to his grave 3 times in Fremantle,
amazing.
Got chased by the cops trying to climb over the fence in the middle of the night one night because we finally found it and it was closed. And, just, I love that man, love that band. So,
well, I took the pilgrimage to London just a few weeks ago. They played 2 shows at Wembley and I caught one of those. And
that's cool.
It was amazing, man. Yeah.
One of my favorite students, Nick, in London, went to one of the shows, and then one of my karate buddies from my days back in New York. His daughter lives there and is married, and he sent me a picture from Wembley.
Awesome.
That's cool.
Well, and that was extra special because that's kind of a homecoming show for Brian and. He's getting older, man, and still just absolutely bringing it. And Angus too, man. It's really special.
Incredible, right? I know.
It's incredible, man.
I heard it was fantastic.
Yeah, and the crowd too. I mean, the crowd is just dialed in for 2 solid hours. But I went with a buddy, and song number 2 in the set list is Back in Black, one of the biggest songs in the history of the world. And that's the second song in their set list.
That's great. That's great.
Unreal. And then the rest of the set, was, big song after big song. And it's just, it was amazing, man. Listen, Paige, we're just scratching the surface, man, but, I got to wrap up. And so I got this last question for you. And
yes,
we've talked about all these different genres and worlds that you're into and that you're fascinated by and that you're interested in. But also, as you kind of take a step back and look at the work you've done with other artists that you've collaborated with, and this is just an understatement, and I'm just barely going down the list, but bands we love on Loudwire Nights, I think of Nine Inch Nails or POD or Linkin Park. Of course, you mentioned it, but you toured with David Bowie. Over all this time, over your career, are there dream partnerships or dream collaborations that have yet to happen that you're like, man, if I could, collaborate with Angus Young or whatever that is, like, are there those collaborations out there?
Of course there are. Because I got this jazz album deal. I believe the label is called MSP or something like that, which is super legit label. Like they have Monty Alexander among many other great artists. And there are people living guitarists that I greatly admire from Lee's Summit, Missouri, Pat Metheny. I just found out his guitar tech came to see us in Virginia, gave his card to our merch guy and said, Pat's a huge fan. And I cried. I was in the back lines of the bus. I got tears in my eyes. That guy changed my life. There are guitarists like Kurt Rosenwinkel and John Schofield, who I find to be amazing. Adam Rogers, so many great guitarists. One of my mentors and heroes is a guy, John Stoll, up in Portland, Oregon. Those guys, I think in a jazz world, I'm not worthy, but I would love to be able to do something with those peers creatively. As far as the rock in the rock world, I mean, I loved sitting in Trent's studio in New Orleans and us kind of like coming from 2 different worlds, mine being a guitar world and his being technology, but we're both. But we're both, Bowie and I talked about this, like Trent's got a great compositional mind. We're both composers at heart. That's the most important thing for writers. I'm no virtuoso, compared to guys like Vi and whoever, but
that's a pretty high bar, man. That's a pretty high bar.
But I think I can write, and I'm proud of that. And so like, if there's someone that I could, I got to, as I said, with, I worked with Joe Henry. That was really fun. Ben Neal, Q, Tim Wiles, Q from Uberzone. That track pops up periodically on my rando mix. It's called Frequency. That was a really amazing collaboration. And he and I have recently kind of touched base again. He's in Chicago now, but, I can't think of anybody off the top of my head. You know what? I met with Serge years ago when he had his solo project, but the music was already kind of done, and we sat in his car and listened to a bunch of songs. And I don't know that I want to go in with somebody and play sideman. I would collaborate. I think Serge is amazing. you know, and you know, I really enjoy the Korn guys. We've become friendly over the years, and I think they're like from '97 to where they are now with Ray on drums is a whole new world. And if they ever asked me to come in and do something, I would, but I don't put myself out there in that way necessarily. So the other main thing that my fantasy is to do this guitar orchestral piece. I'm working on an HBO show right now with my composer pal who teaches at University of Southern California. It was a hit show last year over there called Totenfrau, and this is season 2. And he and I have talked about this, you know, an orchestral, and my manager as well, David, who's English and likes a lot of cool music. And he turned me on some stuff that I, you know, was unaware of.
Yeah.
That kind of world. Elliot Goldenthal was one of my great heroes. I've done about 20 of his movies as a hired gun. Wow. And so that's kind of my next thing is to do this guitar orchestral thing. That's, you know, we'll see.
Yeah. I love hearing that, man. And I love seeing all this. I mean, I think it's really cool to see you just have your hands in so many different things, which, you know, you mentioning Serge. I mean, yeah, we love Serge and System. But we had him on the show because, you know, he just released a memoir not too long ago. And,
cool.
You know, just hearing you talk, man, and hearing these stories and, you know, is that something that interests you, you know, composing your life in book form, kind of putting it out there as a memoir?
Yeah. Many people have brought it up and mentioned it. And I'm open to it, you know, with the right people. Like,
yeah.
But I feel like I'm 64 years old, and I feel like I only have about, if I'm lucky, 20 years. You know, because musicians, to live this long, it's pretty good. You know, the lifestyle we lead and the things we've done to our bodies. So I don't know that I would want to dedicate that much time to talking about my life while I'm still in it, you know?
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
I get that, man. Yeah.
I have all these goals. I have all these musical goals, and I cannot wait to hear a 100-piece orchestra play a big giant Helmet Major 7 sharp 11 chord. Like, whoa, that's
awesome.
And that's
when
a lot
that
of
happens.
work.
When that happens, then maybe the memoir will come.
Then after that,
Awesome.
yeah, once I get that done. So
Page Hamilton, thank you so much for hanging on the show tonight, man. Listen, we didn't even get to talk about it, but congrats on the anniversary reissue of Betty. Fans can stay caught up on everything happening in your world at helmetmusic.com. And Page, man, I mean, I hope we can hang again soon. I'll say you are welcome back whenever you want, man.
Sounds good, Chuck. All right, brother. Nice to meet you.
That wraps up this episode of Loudwire Nights on Demand. Stay caught up with everything happening in the world of rock and metal on the Loudwire app and at loudwire.com.